morning, everybody. As most of people here are Russian speaking and understanding Russian, I'll do my part in Russian, and the rest by Martin will be in English. Доброе утро, коллеги. Пока люди соединяются, наша традиционная часть байки. Немножко о том, как я живу. Уже 7 месяцев без новостей, вдохновленный мыслями Рольфа Дабелли, я перестал слушать радио, читать новости в интернете, телевидение, социальные сети посещать. И, как оказалось, это работает, так можно жить, появилось гораздо больше времени. Читаю книги, общаюсь с людьми. В основном о том, что нужно узнать, я узнаю от друзей, коллег. И книги я в основном слушаю в аудиоформате. При этом это хорошо делать на свежем воздухе, упражняясь, например, укладывая дрова или другие полезные вещи совершая. Так, теперь перейдем, собственно, к нашей конференции, к клубу Brocade. Наш клуб для сертифицированных инженеров Brocade, для заказчиков, использующих директоры Brocade и для партнеров, участвующих в этих проектах. Доброе утро всем. Добро пожаловать на клуб. Сергей, пожалуйста, подтверди, что меня хорошо слышно, видно.
Да, все хорошо видно и все хорошо слышно.
Хорошо, теперь продолжаем. В первую очередь, спасибо партнерам нашего клуба. В этом году достаточно много наших. Несколько вопросов организационных. Во-первых, просьба задавать вопросы не через чат, а через Q&A кнопку. В перерывах у нас будет время для устных ответов докладчиков, но также они могут и по ходу отвечать письменно. В конце вебинара вам будут предложены несколько вопросов обратной связи, поскольку мы мало общаемся, встреч не так много в условиях коронавируса. Нам не хватает информации от вас. Пожалуйста, напишите свои комментарии, мысли, вопросы, чем помочь. И часть дня завтра будет посвящена карточкам наших дружественных подразделений в рамках Broadcom. Это коллеги из Emulex и из серверного подразделения, которое занимается Ethernet-карточками. Так вот, пожалуйста, приглашайте ваших коллег из серверной части, если они еще не зарегистрировались. Регистрация открыта. По программе. В первый день это только Brocade. Мартин Скейген расскажет о стратегии компании, о том, что происходит глобально в мире. А Кевин Джонс, это директор по сервису в регионе EMEA и APAC, расскажет о том, как работает сервис Brocade. Им также можно задавать будет вопросы. Второй день. Точнее, сегодня вторая половина дня – это наши технологические и OEM-партнеры. Краткие выступления по 15 минут. Преимущественно все на русском, кроме Smart Optics. И день второй. Маркус расскажет о новых наших продуктах FOSS 9.1 и SANNAV 2.2. Официальное объявление этих продуктов планируется 15 декабря по американскому времени, то есть они еще сейчас не объявлены, а завтра к вечеру уже должны быть официально объявлены, то есть это самая свежая новая информация. И после перерыва Emulex и Ethernet карточки. Мы продолжаем работать с Сергеем вдвоем. Наш регион прежний, это 12 стран. Я отвечаю за продажи, Сергей технические вопросы. вот у меня обновление, я обнаружил, что все больше и больше людей пытаются связаться со мной по Телеграму, где я есть, но он у меня в беззвучном режиме. Основное средство коммуникации из мессенджеров – это WhatsApp для меня. Также почта и мобильный телефон. Ну и если кто-то еще вдруг не подписан, пожалуйста, подписывайтесь на наш Telegram-канал. И мы продолжаем использовать наш веб-сайт Brocade RF. Это фактически ссылка на вот этот Brocade Event.com RCIS сайт. И туда мы выкладываем нашу текущую информацию, много и русскоязычной, в общем, то, что актуально для нашего региона. Кто сегодня зарегистрировался на наш вебинар? Вот структуру интересно посмотреть. У нас 211 человек были одобрены. Регистрации было больше, но вот в связи с ограничениями на тип участников клуба не всем было одобрено участие, они смогут это в записи послушать. Вот. А из подтвержденных 211 человек, это 10 стран, из них по-русски не понимают только 7 человек. По этой причине мой доклад на русском. И 84% это Россия, дальше идет Украина, Беларусь, Казахстан и остальные страны. Что вообще происходит с компанией Broadcom в целом? Вот вы видите курс акций Broadcom на NASDAQ. Квадратиком, прямоугольником красным обведен последний год. И видно, что за это время акции наши выросли примерно с 400 до 600 долларов. Финансовые результаты 2021 года, который кончился 1 ноября, они были объявлены 9 декабря, и как раз вот с этим связан скачок вверх, достаточно резкий, выше 600 долларов курса акций. То есть в целом у компании все хорошо, и в условиях возросшего спроса на цифровые технологии Broadcom успешно справляется. Если говорить о регионе Россия и СНГ, то состояние рынка здоровое. Последние 4 года особенно активно идет обновление СЭН-инфраструктуры. И несмотря на то, что мы видим, что ситуация сложная и разная, на удивление продажи СЭН в нашем регионе сохраняются очень высокими. И, например, за последние 4 года нами продано больше, чем продано за всю предыдущую историю. Это больше 12 лет работы в регионе. Мы продолжаем обновлять портал, нашу небольшую веб-страничку русскоязычную. Да? И на ней, в частности, актуальная и востребованная информация, как ходить на портал, как скачивать ФОС, лицензии активировать. Вот обведено овалом красным, как раз недавно добавленная информация, там целый пакет инструкций по регистрации начальной на портале, по заходу на портал через сервисные сайты OEM-партнеров, через работу с ассист-порталом Brocade. Посмотрите, если вы испытываете какие-то трудности или ваши коллеги, то вот рекомендуем начать с этих инструкций. Также, что важно, это End-User License Agreement. Если вы никогда его не читали внимательно, то рекомендую почитать. Очень интересный документ. Недавно по просьбе одного из наших заказчиков мы перевели его на русский документ. И русская, и английская версия также выложены вот на этом сайте, в этом пакете инструкций. По доступности продуктов и срокам поставки. Не раз уже про это говорили, но в целом мы видим усложнение доступа к компонентам на мировом IT-рынке. Это общая проблема для всех. Весной 2021 года, этого года, мы попросили партнеров увеличить складские запасы, тем самым компенсируя вот эти увеличенные сроки производства. Крупнейшие наши OEM-партнеры это сделали, и для большинства заказчиков это прошло незамеченным, в том смысле, что те же сроки, как и раньше были. Поставки идут достаточно быстро. Но, тем не менее, когда вы что-то планируете покупать, и у вас жесткие сроки, проверяйте, пожалуйста, конкретно с тем OEM, у кого вы собираетесь покупать, доступность продуктов, что-то есть на складе, что-то нет на складе. Если на складе нет продукта, то поставки могут идти довольно долго. Вот при этом надо понимать, что Broadcom – это один из крупнейших мировых производителей IT-компонент, поэтому нам легче проходить эту ситуацию. Вот. На этом я свою презентацию заканчиваю. Спасибо большое.
So good morning, everybody. I'm Kevin Jones, Director of Support for EMEA and APAC. I look after the field side of things, working very closely with the whole of our GS organization. As you can tell, Martin and I have worked together for, again, about 18 years. So a long-term Brocadian. I've been around in different roles, but always within the support organization. Working very closely with our partners, but also directly with our customers where we have the capability of doing direct support. Unfortunately, in Russia, we only do OEM support at this point in time, and there's no plans to change that. But we have a very good working relationship with all of our OEMs in the Russia region. So today I'm going to talk around how we deliver support to the OEMs from a backline perspective, giving you some insights into how that works. It's reasonably high level. Obviously, as always with these things, there's some confidentiality clauses that we can't go into. But in general, I'll first have to do the legal disclaimer, of course, as always. So everything in this is covered by Brocade. We have to be careful what we share and what we don't share. As Martin alluded to earlier, we have a lot of restrictions because this is a public forum. So let's talk about the infrastructure that we have in place for Brocade, Broadcom itself. We have a global reach. We have 4 centers around the world, 2 in America, 1 in the UK, and 1 in China. That allows us to provide 24/7 support, 365 days of the year, to both our OEMs and to our direct customers. Okay, we're mostly focused in San Jose and Broomfield. And then we have a location, as I said, in Bracknell, in the UK. And that covers most of the European time zones, including Russia. And then we have a specific tech support center based in Shanghai that allows us to address our China market. As you can imagine, that can be some challenging because of language and the different cultural demands there. On the back of that, we have not only the capability of having TAC there, which is our Technical Assistance Center, that's our main tech support centers, but it allows us to have interoperability and testing labs in those locations as well. From an engineering perspective, we have an engineering location in both San Jose and Broomfield, and we also have one in India. That's not associated to our TAC, but it allows us to have the engineering backup 24/7 as well. So as you can see, we have a pretty robust global coverage that allows us to support, like I said, our OEMs 24/7, but also to be able to move cases around the world as need be. So depending on the severity, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, that will allow us to move cases between tech support centers, also in line with most OEMs have the same coverage model. And the cases will follow the OEM's model, tech support centers as well as ours. So we can mirror image what's going on, depending on the criticality of the situation we're in, and we can then fire up as many resources as we need to be able to support that. Moving on, so how does the OEM process actually work? So it's an interesting model if you don't understand how it actually works. So all of our OEMs have support agreements with the end customers. So we don't have any contractual obligation with the end customer. That's with the OEM itself and the customer. It's their customers, not ours. However, because of the way the products are sold, they are included within that support, within that hardware purchase. There is backline support, or what we call backline support. What that means is us providing technical support at a deep either engineering or technical level to be able to provide assistance to the OEMs in their support case challenges. So what do we actually do? Well, from a Brocade perspective, how do we provide that support to our OEMs? So we provide our hardware warranty. That's 13 months from day of purchase. That allows us, initially that's the warranty, that allows us to be able to replace hardware within a defined process. And that's the RMA process, which is the Return Materials Authorization process. Everybody is aware of how that works. Every OEM has the same kind of returns model. You give them, we have a failure, they give them a number, you then return that part to the OEM. The OEM will then return that part to us. Depending on the actual failure, whether we need to do what we call failure analysis, it'll then take a different route through to our SQA labs and our engineering guys who will do a full testing process on that. And it's a defined process that is very extensive depending on the severity of the failure. Once we have that, then that particular failure analysis report can be sent back to the OEM and then back to the customer. We probably do around less than 5% of our failures do we do FA on, mainly because we understand what that failure is. It's either a component failure or it's something's broken. But where we have those situations where we're not quite sure what it is, whether it is a software failure or a hardware failure, we'll take that into the process and try and identify what that is, and then produce a specific report back to the OEMs, who will then package it up in their own process and present that to the customer. We also provide firmware support. That, what that means is FOSS, obviously. So that allows us to provide FOSS to the customer. The process that we have now is that it is secure, some serial number entitlement. So if a particular product has support with both the OEM and backline support with us, then we can then provide that to the customer. Of course, the good thing about that is if you have a valid contract, you get the latest and greatest firmware. Now, I'm sure that you've all seen the challenges we've had over the last probably 18 months, 2 years, where we've changed our process for FOSS availability. We've actually streamlined down what is available and what's not. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is there were so many versions of FOSS out there. It was very difficult for us to be able to support that in a professional manner. So we reduced that down to target path firmware plus one level back as well, which is pretty standard process and procedure for most companies to have that. I mean, we're not the only vendor that does that, but it does allow us to make sure that any security vulnerabilities that we have, any new functions and features and functionality that are available, are up at the top level, so that you guys in the field have the latest and greatest. Obviously, that allows us to also look at sustainability with the FOSS. If we're not looking after hundreds of FOSSes, and believe me, we were probably looking at well in excess of 75 FOSS releases that we were trying to support globally. That's not sustainable in the current marketplace. So we honed that down, and we are where we are right now. Then if you look at customer support, again, these, I know I'm emphasizing that there are valid maintenance contracts. That's between the OEM and us. So we always make sure that we have a very good renewal process in place and make sure that the OEMs are supporting the right products in the field with the right levels of support on the backlines for us. So if a customer has a contract with an OEM, and that's fine, but the OEM doesn't have backline support, then we won't support that. That's just a process and policy that we have within Brocade. So if we look at what the actual support model looks like for the OEM, they're providing level 1 and level 2 to the end customer. What does that mean? That's normal call opening, and then first initial triage of the situations going on. And the OEMs will probably resolve 95% of cases automatically within their own technical support organization. Those 5–10% of cases that are escalated to us, which are normally very complicated issues, this involves multiple storage, multiple vendors, etc., etc. those L3 guys, the escalation guys, will then escalate to us into Brocade. So what do our priority and case severities look like? All of this information, by the way, is available on broadcom.com under support, under Brocade products. We provide all of this out there. So again, we're not keeping anything secret. This is all there for you guys to look at. So we have 4 levels of support of case severity. Obviously, going from the bottom to the top. So the low is just standard business updates, probably not very technical and certainly not very critical. It could be an issue with a particular function doesn't seem to be working. Probably we'll investigate that. Most of our cases come in as a medium from the OEMs, which is probably around, like I said, 10% of the cases that come through to us. Again, if you look at our support organizations, we are available 24/7. You can always pick up the phone to us. And all of the OEMs escalation teams have a very good relationship with Brocade escalation teams as well. So there's a very good working relationship with there. There's also great communication. There's a good management peer-to-peer structure as well. Everybody knows everybody. We have regular weekly update meetings across all of the cases per OEM, and we do that per OEM. And then we have quarterly QBRs where we'll review all of the cases that have happened over the last 3 months, whether we need to change anything from a process perspective. We'll look at it, make sure everything's working as expected from both of us. And it's a two-way street, right? We may expect the OEMs to deliver X, but they don't deliver until we get to Y. So again, it's just making sure we do that. The other way of opening the cases, of course, is via the web. And that's the preferred way, basically because we capture all the right information. It's all there in our case CRM, and we can then track it, and then the OEMs can track it through the CSP, which is the customer support portal. Okay. So if we look at the process itself, if we're talking about direct support, then we can have all kinds of severity of cases and all kinds of different technical aspects of the cases. When we're talking to our OEMs, they have access to our most talented and cleverest guys that we have in our TAC. And most of our TAC organization is, I would say, probably 20 plus years experience at least of working in SAN. They're a very good, dedicated team, very experienced. They know exactly what's going on, and have a lot of understanding around what the issues can be. They work very closely with our engineering folks to make sure that they understand the new functionality is coming out, and the impact of that on our current FOSS levels. So we could be looking at all kinds of different challenges across the board. The engineer, the senior guys in what we call escalation. So we have 3 levels, which is L1, L2, and L3. L1 is the case handling, L2 is standard TAC operation, then we have our escalation teams. Our escalation teams, as I said, are the most experienced and top guys that we have. They work very closely with our engineering guys, but also work in our own labs, in our interoperability labs, to making sure that we have hands-on experience of what we're trying to achieve. So they can try and replicate some of the issues that we have in their own labs. We can see the behavior of the problem, hopefully, and then we can provide that to engineering, and then the engineering guys will go away and see whether it's a defect that needs to be resolved, or whether it's a known bug, or whether it's actually working as expected, and maybe that's not the expectation of the field from our customers, and so we may have to do some changes there. One of the other main functions of the engineering guys, the senior tech support guys, is creating knowledge base articles. We spend a lot of time in making sure that we provide or create content that will address some issues, so that we can do what we know, some self-learning, where guys can go in and look at the CSP, find the knowledge base, and understand what that problem is for their customers, and from an OEM perspective, and then provide that update to their customers without having to go through all of the convoluted exchanges between both support OEMs and our support teams. You know, and we could have some time zone challenges depending on the case severity, so you can get quite a lot of delays. So we've invested an awful lot of time and skill set into creating KB articles for the field, for the OEMs, and I would encourage you all to look at some of those knowledge base. They are very good at understanding what the challenges are specific to an issue that you may be seeing, or maybe it's around how do I configure X, Y, and Z. So what does the customer to OEM to Brocade support flow look like? I've kept it reasonably simple, and I think sometimes you can overcomplicate these flows, but it is pretty simple, right? So, you know, the customer has an issue, he talks to his local OEM support team, they'll look at the issue and decide it needs to have a case created, they'll get the case created, and then we go through the internal processes within the OEM of their escalation case flow. I haven't put that on here because each one is individual, but basically most of us follow the same process, which is you open a case, you have your L2 guys look at it, they understand or don't understand, and they say, I don't know what the problem, I don't understand what the resolution is, I'm going to escalate it up to my team within the OEM. The OEM will then look at that and go, okay, we don't know the answer to that. That now needs to be escalated to Brocade. So that takes us to the third point here, where it's now into Brocade, and the senior engineer will then look at that, work with engineering as need be. Not everything turns into a defect or into a firmware support issue, a new code release, etc. But it could be just, okay, we've identified this issue. What do we want to do with it? How do we then? And as you can see, that's a two-way street between all four boxes. But the one you need to look at here is this one here. So between Brocade and OEM is where a lot of the conversation goes on. And then the OEM will then resolve, when they understand what the problem is, what the resolution is, will then communicate with the customer. As you can see, there is no communication between Brocade and the customer because the relationship from the support contract perspective is between OEM and customer. And that's the way that the agreement's always been. That's the way that we'd like to do business. The OEM owns the customer, not Brocade. Okay. So I'll go to the questions afterwards, obviously. I'm sure there'll be a few. A couple of things. I want to talk about the license portal. Again, we made some changes to that for end users. So if you're doing a license change, then you have to accept the EULA. The EULA is the end user license agreement, which provides us the legal acceptance that you will use the FOSS and the license in the right way. There have been some circumstances over the last couple of years where we've had some counterfeit licenses being created by some companies globally, where they are not obviously not legal or legit for us, and have caused us many issues around usage, etc., etc. Once we were brought on board by Broadcom, Broadcom have a very strict policy around license agreements, and that goes back through historical use of chips, etc., and where they built stuff. So they have a very strict legal process for that, hence the EULA. For OEM customers to access the license, then you have to go through the Assist portal. The Assist portal, again, is you have to have a valid maintenance agreement. You have to get access to that Assist portal. Again, prior to downloading the software, entitlement checks are put on the performed. And again, you have to accept the EULA. Again, we come down to this, making sure that we're using a legal version of the license as well as FOSS. And if you see at the bottom there, I put a web link to the Assist portal user guide. All of those are in the public domain on Broadcom.com. We have a lot of documents on there that can be used or can be accessed without having a valid contract in place. Okay, there's a lot of information on our support portal that will allow you to get some of this information. This is the last slide I've got for today. Like I said, I've kept this very high, and I expect to see lots of questions, so I've put some time at the end for us for questions. A lot of questions have always got, we have a lot of questions around the CSP, which is the customer support portal. How do I find content? How do I find knowledge base? How do I understand what what products are EOL, end of life, and end of support? How do I get access to X, Y, and Z? The first document locating Brocade content is a document that was put together because we had a lot of these questions. It's very comprehensive, and it's actually a great document. I use it even now, and I know some of my engineers do as well. And then the last one is the software postings I talked about earlier around the FOSS releases that we've reduced. This will give you access to exactly what is available right now. Again, it does depend on what OEM release has been qualified and is available. So there are specific OEM versions. So X and Y, depending on the code list. Again, that link will allow you to get to what you need to look at and what's available right now.
Thank you, Kevin. No questions so far. So you have, just team, you have a unique chance to ask our deepest, oldest expert in this area of support who really make the decisions. So please ask about support.
I'm not as handsome as Martin, but I thought I might get one question at least.
You're wonderful. So Kevin, so he started to present 6:45 UK time. So Kevin is based in UK.
Yeah, it's pretty early. So guys, so just a little bit of background about myself. Like I said, I've been in with Brocade for 18 years. I've been in the industry for nearly 40 now, which is a long time. So I've seen a lot of changes, going back to the old bus and tag days. So before we had fiber channel stuff, etc. So yeah.
So the first question to you, Kevin.
Can a customer open? No, only if they not if they have OEM support. If you have Brocade direct support, then yes, the contract is between Brocade and the customer. With OEM support, the contract is between the OEM and the customer. So no, you can't, unfortunately. And unfortunately, we don't offer Brocade direct support in the Russia arena.
So next question.
What about Huawei product support? Any news? So Huawei is a challenge for us, and a challenge for us globally. There have been a lot of restrictions placed on Huawei over the last couple of years, down to the federal government in the US, which has allowed us to have some challenges around Huawei support and actually providing some Huawei products globally. My understanding is that Huawei are at this present point in time looking at how they can provide support in Russia. There has been some challenges, and I understand there are some discussions going on right now around what they can offer and what they can't offer, and how do they allow their product hardware sales to increase around with support attached to that. So at this point in time, I can't give you any information around that. I can tell you that there are a lot of discussions going on, and I'm hoping to make sure that there'll be some progress very early in 2022.
So I can tell you what I know about these, that we have specific projects currently, and in one specific case, Huawei confirmed that they can support Brocade switches, directors, and from terms of sanctions, starting February this year, my understanding that Huawei can support Brocade products. It is permitted for them. And it was rather a question of implementation. Technically they do it currently in Russia? So the answer that I've got from them that they can do it, but still we are investigating other options to enable support in Russia and CIS region if Huawei cannot do it themselves. So stay tuned.
Excellent. Question: is it possible to request the required version of FOSS through support and not through the Broadcom customer support portal? Sometimes the confirmation of registration on the CSP portal takes a long time. Unfortunately, not. And the reason around that is that the EULA needs to be signed. If there are specific issues, I'm presuming that the slowness is because of verification. If there are challenges around that, then you should escalate through to your support to the OEM, and they can help you to facilitate getting the right level of FOSS.
So I can also comment on this. We discussed this with Lonnie, who is managing support globally. So there are actually two ways to get the FOSS: is through customer support portal or through opened support case. So you can go to OEM partner, who then requests by email the FOSS from Brocade support team. Brocade support team by email requests acceptance of an end-user license agreement, EULA, and this EULA may be supported or may be confirmed either by the customer or by OEM partner if they have support contract with the customer and they act on behalf of the customer. And in this case, customer or OEM accept end-user license agreement, email it to Brocade support in the USA, and they provide FOSS. It is kind of a manual process. It is possible, at least theoretically, and there are some cases when it already worked, but some OEMs do not agree on this. So it is a complex thing.
Yeah. Again, I think it comes down to the severity of where we are with the case and whether the FOSS is needed very quickly. We always try and speed up and be reactive to customer situations, as Nick says. But again, it still needs to flow through the OEM because that's where the contract lies. I hope that answers your question. Okay. Don't see any more questions, Nick.
Yeah, one more.
Just pop in and look. This was probably there was and then that's what the portal will update and really be global update. So just rather 10 minutes. So I think it's twofold. So there is some added functionality that has been added to the CSP as of next week, I believe, where there are some questions around updates being sent out. If if you register them for the CSP, you get lots of updates coming through continuously if code is uploaded. That's being changed, so you can opt out of that. The actual CSP itself, from a global perspective, is not changing. So there'll just be some enhancements made to it. The CSP actually sits under Broadcom as an umbrella, and each of the divisions use part of the CSP for their own support capabilities. So as Broadcom update it, it'll filter through all of the different BUs.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Thank you. So, colleagues, you can also ask questions not only to Kevin, but so there are several panelists already here. So it can be either Sergei Tselekov, myself, Stefan Renneberg, ADVA, Denis Tuzhilkin, IBM, Alexey Apolchenov, Hewlett-Packard, and Denis Serov, NetApp. So all are here, so you can ask different questions. Otherwise, we have half an hour of break, and the next presentation will be by Stefan Renneberg at 10:45. It will be ADVA.
Well, thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin, very much.
Any questions? Just if there are any additional questions, Nick, then let me know later on.
Okay, thank you. So you can drop here.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Cheers.
Коллеги, осталась в основном русскоязычная аудитория. Если не будет с вашей стороны вопросов, то просто у нас полчаса перерыв до 10:45. Вот, значит, вопрос по возможно ли уменьшить срок реагирования между запросом ФОС на скачивание и непосредственно скачиванием ФОС. Последний раз у меня был лаг в сутки. На самом деле сутки это не такое плохое время. Как выглядит процесс одобрения на скачивание? Значит, сначала, если у вас вообще нет аккаунта на портале и вы регистрируетесь, проходит проверка экспортного контроля. Это обычно сутки, ну там ближайший рабочий день, который есть в США на проверку и одобрение. При этом, если у вас горит и надо срочно, то пишите мне письмо, я напрямую могу попросить экспортный контроль в США, а по возможности скорее разблокировать того или иного заказчика или партнера. В случае, если заказчик находится под теми или иными санкциями, может потребоваться заполнение формы Export Compliance Certification. Соответственно, рассчитывайте, что время может быть еще дольше. Допустим, что вы нормально зарегистрировались, у вас есть аккаунт Enterprise уровня на портале, вы можете скачивать ФОС, вы запрашиваете скачивание ФОС. И тут происходит вторая проверка. Это уже проверка теми службами, которые предоставляют ФОС. Это инженерная команда. Проверяется, ну, во-первых, они смотрят, есть ли разрешение экспортного контроля, которое уже, в общем-то, по вам должно было быть ранее сделано. А также они смотрят по серийнику, проверяют, находится ли данный коммутатор на поддержке и тот ли ФОС вы запрашиваете, что вам нужен для этого типа коммутатора. Вот по правилам, которые выложены у нас, вот в частности на Brocade RF, то, что я в начале своей презентации говорил, это может занять до 3 суток. Вот формально просто, когда вы только все это заполнили, вам приходит сообщение, что ожидайте, решение будет принято в течение 3 суток. Если у вас горит, опять же, пишите мне письмо, и я могу напрямую послать запрос в США тем людям, которые это одобряют в сервисной команде. И, как правило, они могут очень оперативно среагировать. Но в целом общее пожелание, если вы планируете работы по апгрейду ФОС, не надо ждать до последней минуты, до последнего дня. Планируйте, что могут быть задержки по получению ФОСа.